Pursuing something you've always wanted to do is basically what video games are for. Where else would you be able to order around a group of vegetable aliens to fight for you and negotiate with Mahatma Gandhi so that he doesn't nuke you? But not all video games are so kind with this level of choice. Some just want to see you suffer.
I remember playing a lot of games during my childhood where boss fights were pretty simple. Maybe I just didn't understand the narrative enough. Maybe Star Fox Adventures is actually the most dramatic video game ever made. The theme of boss fights symbolizing a test of your skills has carried over from classic gaming into the modern era, but with a greater focus on storytelling and tying the two together wherever possible, it's rare for there to be no stakes when fighting one. A boss fight that leaves you depressed for the right reasons rather than it being disappointing is an incredible subversion of expectations. Victory over one of the bad guys is supposed to give you enough motivation to push on and continue fighting the good fight. Instead, some games have shown the shame you can feel after defeating certain obstacles. And it's not like you've got a choice here. Even if you know it's gonna bum you out, you still have to go through with it. Just never be attached to any character in any video game and live the rest of your life as a stoic, emotionless machine. Or just don't play video games. Probably the most depressing solution of all. When you've got a direct comparison of two very similar games, you notice small differences that stack up to create a big contrast. You know, one game will be harder, one will be more story-driven, one might have a greater plot twist at the end. All that good stuff. Of course, the closer the two games, the more significant the comparison. Not so easy with Pokemon games since there's virtually no difference, but two Fire Emblem games released side by side? Alright, I'm down with that. By hearing the concept, you'd think that Fire Emblem Fate's Conquest, is that the full title? It's very lengthy. You'd think that a game where you play as the bad guys is probably going to be the darker of the two. Oh, but the things you learn over time.
Both Fire Emblem Fates games have this trying to win despite the cost mentality. You'll be trying to do all you can to make the world a better place and unite both kingdoms, but doing so while avoiding casualties is quite hard. Conquest asks you the moral questions, Birthright just straight up kills people.
But hey, you're the good guys, right? You can get away with killing dozens of important characters because you're on the righteous side of the conflict. War crimes aren't even a thing, don't know what you're talking about. Interestingly, in Birthright, a member of the bad guys actually joins up with you. Kinda complicated, but you abandon your adopted family to fight with your birth family and at least tags along when things stop being rosy at home, and spends the rest of the game being as sickeningly adorable as possible. Which is needed really, especially since you need to fight Xander later down the line. The eldest brother of your adopted family and someone who's hell-bent on taking you out for betraying their family. So much so that he accidentally kills Elise trying to cut you down. She lives just long enough to tell Xander to stop fighting, but what's really interesting and depressing is that he refuses, using Elise's death as a catalyst more than anything. Now you've got a boss fight, more of a one-on-one confrontation than other boss fights in the franchise, having just seen the saddest cutscene in the game. Almost certainly the saddest cutscene in any of these games. It's lower down since you can cut through the drama in one turn if you get a crit like I did, but the intent is admirable and pretty powerful. No one comes out of this looking good. Story-driven video games that have story-important boss fights rarely leave them without some kind of emotional tinge to them. It's a great chance to tug at your heartstrings in a way that doesn't have to feel contrived, especially with enough build-up. And hey, I know a game series with lots of story. Kingdom Hearts. I've done my research. This is a series that has such a thick, intertwining story that keeping up with all of it can take a lot of effort. Thankfully, there are some games that try and tell standalone stories, and the good news is that Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days is one of them. The bad news is the game itself isn't all that good from what I've heard. Slow pacing, annoying missions, and a title that I think no one knows how to say correctly. Let's go with 179 days. It's just begging me to solve that equation. So without going too much into the details of the story, because I swear I'll never make it out alive, 179 Days tells a melancholy story of a bunch of nobodies called Roxas, Axel, and Shion, who spend their days bonding over ice cream and trying to work out what their purpose is in this world where no one feels emotion. While the game itself isn't brilliant due to agonizingly slow pacing, the cutscenes where stuff actually happens help to flesh out these three characters over time. It just takes quite a long time. By the end, you've got some pretty interesting characters to think about, which only serves to make the final battle against Shion all the harder. Definitely a character you grow to like over the course of the whole game, but now she's been altered by the bad guy to defeat and absorb Roxas, suddenly all those scenes about ice cream feel like a long time ago. It's a simple enough fight, pretty tricky since it's near the end, but also because, you know, friends. Add into that a tear-jerking death scene and the fact that, due to her role in the story, I think I get it, but it's still tricky to understand, no one remembers her after she dies. I don't play games to have my own existentialism questioned.
Slow pacing in a video game can be hard to defend, but if it's building up to an engaging ending, it can be somewhat forgivable. It would be nice if you got on with it a bit earlier, but at least when you replay the game you got something to look forward to. Maybe look forward to is the wrong word to be using here. Maybe it would be more thematically appropriate if you felt nothing.
Bosses being these great obstacles and a mark of your progress through the game means that the sense of anticipation before a fight is usually quite palpable. It's based off of previous experiences and the expectancy that has been crafted by fighting preceding fights both within the game and gaming in general. What I'm trying to say with all of this is that Dark Souls handles bosses in a particular way that impacts your own sense of the challenges put before you. Practically every game in the series spends a brief period of time telling you how things work before throwing you across the screen as every death brings you closer to understanding it all. Boss fights are just a concentrated dose of this, a grueling challenge that tests your resolve as well as your skill. But hey, there's always room for variations on a theme. The natural reaction to a Dark Souls boss is to hate it. Maybe not so much when you get to grips with fighting it, but at the start, yeah, piece of shit. No player hates Sif the Great Grey Wolf, rather they hate themselves for having to kill her, I think. Sif is a female name in Norse, it's also a brand of cleaning solution in this country. You'd think that a fight against a sword-wielding wolf would be aggravating enough for nothing to be salvaged from it, but as you start to piece together that the wolf is using the sword of a fallen master who became corrupted against his will, and that she now guards his grave and is only fighting you so that you don't befall the same fate as her master, manly tears, manly tears. And so rather than a fight against some horrendous monstrosity, you're going toe-to-toe with a graceful wolf who copies the fighting style of her master. But the truly depressing part comes when you're nearly done with the fight. Moments like these benefit from small touches, and as Sif runs out of health, she starts limping and staggering, sometimes even falling over. It's at this point that we acknowledge that this is a perfect allegory for Dark Souls in general, providing a challenge on the surface that contains incredible detail if you dig deeper, and also that this is the saddest fucking sight you're ever likely to see in a game like this. Never thought you could replace anger with sadness so damn quickly.
Is there a size limit when it comes to feeling bad after killing something? You might feel bad after killing an insect or a spider, but would you also feel shame after killing something absolutely massive? Is there a size limit on self-defense? Is it appropriate when you're fighting giant monsters? Not everything is trying to kill you.
Shadow of the Colossus was making you feel like shit before it was cool. For the longest time, there was an air of mystery about it all. Incredible action as you scale these titanic creatures, but tinged with a slight air of doubt. It suckers you in with the promise of perfectly choreographed fights with all this nonsense, and then hits you hard somewhere delicate just as you should be celebrating your victory. That means that no boss fight feels victorious. Everything is just slightly depressing whatever happens. Of course, this builds to a head by the end of the game, not helped by the death of the only companion you had in this very lonely adventure. And by the time you're facing down the final Colossus, it's not that there are questions in your head wondering if you're doing the right thing, more like statements. Really, any Colossi could be on here since killing all of them feels bad, but the final Colossus Malus is pretty much the final nail in the coffin. You've been going through various states of emotional rawness throughout the game, but the long road before reaching Malus gives you enough time to think that no reward could be worth all of this. Climbing up the 16th Colossus isn't much different to the other fights, but this time the focus, at least at the start, is squarely on atmosphere. It's kinda bizarre really, you've got lightning going off in the black sky and tons of rain, and yet it's not played in a grandiose way. Less like it's accentuating the scenario to make it feel more awesome, more like even fucking nature is against you here. It's a tough old trek getting to Malus, which I think makes it all the more depressing when you get virtually no reward for reaching and killing him. Kind of where the game loses all pretense of giving you an incentive. No light at the end of the tunnel, you've gotta really want this. And you know how this game has gone up until now, you can kind of anticipate there being no satisfaction involved. Still hurts though. Depressing boss fights work so well because they catch you off guard. Even in a game as generally downbeat as Shadow of the Colossus, you're still caught unaware by certain events and the effect they have on the player, the protagonist, all of the above. Of course, it ends up being depressing because we expect something we can be proud of afterwards, as is the general nature of boss fights. But can you still feel depressed after a fight you know won't end well? Better hope so, otherwise mentioning it is kind of irrelevant. Gotta stay relevant here. There'll be some people who will have predicted the inclusion of Mother 3's final battle in a video like this, either at number 1 or just here in general. Joke's on you though, because I saw the comments coming a mile away. Who's predictable now, eh? But no, predictability is hardly a negative attribute in this guard. Popularity that helps fuel predictability is usually based off something. The battle against the Masked Man in Mother 3 is both inevitable and fucking painful as you fight for the future of the world against a deeply corrupted version of your twin brother Klaus, who for a large part of the game was thought to be dead. Don't worry though, he soon will be, and you'll be the one to do it. But the game dwells on what Klaus being the Masked Man means. Anytime something dramatic happens in Mother 3, it's not like the game sweeps it under the rug and moves on. As soon as it's revealed who the Masked Man is, you're inundated with moving flashbacks and dialogue that is specifically designed to make this confrontation as emotionally charged as possible. You approach large parts of Mother 3 with optimism, and there's even a brief moment where Klaus remembers Lucas and you think you can salvage a happy ending out of this. But no, Klaus deliberately kills himself by firing an attack at Lucas's Franklin badge, and you're robbed of the happy ending that you wished for. Not expected, just hoped. Just when you thought that something could be salvaged, the door is slammed in your face. Brutal stuff.
This is RabbidLuigi, and Klaus's death isn't helped by what happens because of it. You pull the last of the 7 needles, and it doesn't make everything better, you actually destroy the world. You summon a big dragon who destroys all the bad guys, but also everything else. So you've killed your brother, and you summon the apocalypse. If you're happy and you know it.
Got a topic that you'd like me to discuss in a countdown? Leave a suggestion in a comment below and head over to my Twitter, where I'll be holding a vote to decide the subject of the next countdown based off the best of your submissions. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that. I found over the last few weeks that as I've been planning for November's Pokemonth, this kind of organization parasite spreads to other things as well. Suddenly I've got a pretty good idea of what I'm doing for Halloween, what I'll be doing until the end of the year, pretty much. Amazing what a bit of prior planning can do for your workload. But anyway, if you want to support the channel a bit more directly, consider donating to my Patreon, where just this week, I posted a tutorial on making green screens do funky things. You too can be a floating head in space singing Katy Perry's Firework backwards and in French. I've had that dream too, I getcha.